Hi there, this is Lynn at the Inside the Franchise Diary, and today I have Roxy or Roxac. Roxy probably can introduce herself far better than I. Rox is a specialist in social media, community management, marketing, etc. And today I want to discuss social media in a franchise environment and how one should be managing. So, welcome, Rox. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself so the audience knows what you do?
Thank you, Lynn, for the lovely introduction. I specialize in social media management, and that includes content creation as well as community management for brands. I've done a lot of work with franchisees specifically, so I do understand that this kind of business model has very unique challenges, and share some ideas about how can people can use social media marketing to kind of grow their franchise business.
Thanks, Rox. Well, what I really want to talk about is what I've been noticing out in the marketplace. Obviously, I'm a franchise consultant, and I get to see a whole lot of things happening in the market space. And one of the things that has been getting my attention is the fact that franchisees tend to be going rogue and posting and creating social profiles and doing all sorts to get attention on social media. And I'm not sure that many of their franchisors actually know they're doing these sort of things, because you can see that it's not aligned to what the brand strategy is, and there hasn't been assistance or approval from head office or the franchisor. Do you want to talk a little bit about why franchisees would do?
For sure, it's a miscommunication between the franchisee and the franchisor. So generally, franchisees may think that the franchisor is their marketing plan is ineffective because they don't see feet through the door, and because they're not always included in the granular details of social media and what's working and what's not working. So the franchisors, their responsibility is to look after the brand and grow it from a national level, whereas franchisees, they're more interested in what's happening locally for their store, and that's kind of where you get that misdirect between the two different things. And the franchisee, because they don't see any movement, or maybe the franchisor doesn't communicate with them as well as they could, they think nothing's happening, and that's when they try to take matters into their own hands, and they want to do their own marketing because they think that they can do a better job. And often it's not wrong, because the franchisees, they understand their local markets, but there could just be better communication between the two, and just keeping the franchisee updated so that they know that we are busy doing this.
Thank you for that. I think you point out that communication is always so key in a franchise environment, and understanding your franchisees. And I am always on about how do we create win-win situations. So it's not a win for us if a franchisee's creating social media posts that are a little rogue or off base in terms of what the strategy is. Q, what do you think franchisors could do to include their franchisees? Maybe if you talk about it from a perspective of, they're large franchisors, they have marketing teams, they can do a whole lot. And then there are smaller franchisors who can't afford the same sort of marketing team that a large one could. What would the two, I think there are two very different strategies here. Don't you want to tell us your thoughts on some of that?
The larger brands, the kind of brands that would have an internal marketing team, it would benefit them to update their franchisees and let them in on the marketing. I've worked with a couple of brands where those franchisees, they don't know anything often what can be happening, so just to give them an update. It doesn't have to be weekly or even monthly updates. Maybe it could be, this is our marketing plan or our strategy for the quarter. Ideally, they should be giving some sort of feedback every month, and to give a plan and create a platform where the franchisees can communicate and share with them, look, this is working and this is not working, that would help. I know that sometimes it's not always practical for the franchisor to communicate with, especially when they may have 100 plus stores, they can't speak to everyone. But there's ways and means around that. They could set up Google Forms, to send a little questionnaire out. So the franchisee, if they're happy to answer a couple of questions, that comes into a form that goes to the marketing team. The marketing team may be able to make better decisions with their marketing because they can know. That's interesting. About 50% of our franchisees said that this didn't work, or they didn't feel the impact, or they may have said that something else worked for them. So I definitely think that they can benefit all round to see, because they're the ones on the ground, to see what is actually happening or working for them. So that's on a bigger franchise level, just to communicate with them and listen to their feedback and include them in the conversation and automate ways to try and make that more practical, especially when there's a lot of them. And then from a smaller franchisee point of view, it's all budget dependent, because in the smaller franchisee or franchisor environment, it may be that they allow the franchisees to create their own Facebook pages. And my experience is that initially there's a lot of excitement, and what they'll do is they'll create the page, and they may even get some posts so that they are ready to post, and they were going to do everything, and then they lose interest, or life happens, or they get busy, so, and then what happens is that they stop posting, and so that can be worse for the brand on a national level as well as them on a local level, because it makes them look smaller than what they are. Or someone immediately thinks, if I go to a Facebook page and you're there but you haven't posted in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, there's people that are sending queries, you're not responding to them, they make a perception, they think the business has closed down. Yeah. So there's a lot of things there, and that can be addressed by creating more of a templated approach. So if you understand whether you've got 1 store or 4 stores or 10 stores, you can set your franchisees up for success, put the power in their hands and say, here are the templates that you can use. Even better still, if you can get an agency that can post for you and they can provide that consistency. Franchisees should be focused on running their business, and then let the marketing people make sure that they specialize in what they do, and make sure that they can keep consistently posting and also respond in a better way. This is something I'm so passionate about, Lynn, is that, when it comes to responding on social media, you think you're responding in a certain way, but because there's no tone in social media, someone could perceive that as you were being rude. Social media managers, they're skilled in how to respond to someone and making sure that it's neutral and professional. I definitely think that's why you need to invest sometimes in marketing professionals that know how to have conversations on social media.
So I think that's quite important, to have conversations on social media, because, I think you pointed out that if the franchisee is not responding, well, then there's no conversation going on. The conversation actually fell flat. So I do think, brands have reputation with that. And I do agree with you that, perhaps it's better to have dedicated professional assist your franchisees and be able to see and monitor when a response, when a response is required or comment needs to be replied, etc., etc. I think those things and those aspects of social media are incredibly important. And I understand why a franchisor doesn't want to just allow franchisees to do all of this for these very reasons, and because of the reputational risk that goes along with allowing franchisees to do it. From what we are saying today, there are strategies that a franchisor can put into place in order to safeguard the brand, but as well as be inclusive to franchisees within the brand and say, this is how we're going to do social media. This is how we're going to handle it. Can you send us content? What would you like to see, Mr. Franchisee? What depicts your area? What depicts what you think is your customer? So I do think what you're saying is 100% correct. I suppose for each franchise, a franchisor has got to make a decision and say, what would be the strategy? What do I want to implement? And how do I bring my franchisees along?
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing is, and I know that you have worked on some brands and I have worked on some brands where we really do see that the franchisor wasn't listening or wasn't doing enough for their little local business or assisting them in getting feet through the door. And therefore they're so desperate to get the sales and the turnovers that they'll do anything to drive the feet through the door. So I guess the pearls of wisdom here are to franchisors to say, include your franchise because they're going to go off and do it anyway if you don't. So, let's get together and have a strategy rather than having a franchisee going off rogue. And Rox, do you have suggestions?
I think that a strategic content plan that you can create with input from your franchisees should be, and I think let's separate. So franchisors, it's their responsibility to look after the national brand, right? And then your franchisees are there to look after their regional, their local area. If you have a content plan or a strategy from your franchisor to say, okay, these are the messages, the key messages that we have strategically decided on for the year or for the quarter or for the month. These are the things that we need to push. So there's like that skeleton framework of all the important messages that need to be said. And then the franchisee would be able to fill in the gap of like their store is not the same as their little store in, let's say, maybe Randburg is very different to the store in Polokwane. Then the franchisee would be speaking to their local specialization about the unique types of customers and audiences that they deal with. And then there wouldn't be so much pressure on them to provide content, to keep people engaged. So I think that they can work with the franchisors to provide a nice mix.
Thanks. I think that's very
of strategic
important.
messaging
Yes.
and local messaging. Yeah.
And I think important to note that some franchisees will not want to do it. So a franchisor is going to have to take that into account and say, well, what do I actually do? What do I implement? Because then it's better to have a little media agency taking care of it, knowing what's posted, not posted. But whichever way, having a dedicated team doing it and keeping the franchisees abreast. Because there's no doubt some franchisees will want to do things and want to get more involved. And there will be others who will be just very happy to say, please do it for me. So, I think that's the hardest part for a franchisor to actually manage. Well, thanks, Rob.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that the communication should be there. So that's the problem with franchisees. They think that nothing's going on, but actually there is a lot going on. They're just not seeing it.
Yes.
And I see it in social media as well. It's like maybe the strategy for the social media is to get engagement, or the other way would be you want to drive click-throughs to the website, which means you're not actually encouraging engagement and comments. So then someone thinks that the social media is not working, but the objective of the advert is not to get someone to engage, is to get someone to click through to the website to go view the products or to find a store. It's important that we make sure that everyone's included and kind of kept up to date and that they know what's happening. Then they're less likely to go rogue, as you say, because then they would feel like something's happening. And the only reason why they go rogue is because they have a perception that nothing is happening, when actually that may not be the case.
Again, it's a very important element of franchising. Franchising is all about, I bought a brand, what is happening with marketing this brand, and how is it happening? So your points to communication and my points to, as a franchise consultant, to saying, include your franchisees, take them by the hand, show them what you're doing. So I think that in a nutshell sums up what we've been discussing today with social media strategy in a franchise environment. Rox, I'd love to thank you for making the time to be with us today at the Inside the Franchise Diary, which is my new podcast featuring everything that is about success in franchising. And I look forward to having you back and having some chats in the future about what you're seeing and, your experiences again with social media, and as you know, everything changes so quickly. Now we've got AI to worry about too. So, but I look forward to
For
seeing you
sure.
soon.
Thank you,
And
Lynn.
thank you so much for coming and spending some time the franchise inside the franchise diary. I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Thanks so much for your time.